Good day. This is Russell Hawley coming to you from the Tate Geological Museum in Casper, Wyoming. And today I'm going to be talking to you just a little bit about caves and the structures you can find in a cave. This is an example of part of a cave. This is part of the ceiling of a cave. And these structures are called cave drippings. As water soaks through the overlying rock, it collects dissolved minerals, in this case silicate. And then, as it drips from the ceiling of the cave, the silicate will evaporate and, the water will evaporate and leave behind deposits of those minerals, in this case, silicate. So under a magnifying glass, you can see that this texture here is formed from thousands and thousands of tiny, tiny quartz crystals. Now that's actually fairly unusual. Most cave formations are made of another mineral, specifically calcite, partly because calcium carbonate is much more dissolvable in water, much more soluble than silica is. And as the calcium carbonate laden water drips from the ceiling of the cave, it leaves behind deposits of a rock called travertine. And first of all, it will collect one drop, leaving behind a deposit, and then another drop, and that leaves behind a deposit. And eventually that little knob in the ceiling of the cave will get longer and longer and longer and form what's called a soda straw. And then water coming down around the outside of that soda straw will leave deposits as well. And so that'll get thicker and thicker and thicker. And then eventually you've finally got a great big structure coming out of the ceiling of the cave that looks a whole lot like an icicle, but it's made out of rock, and that is called a stalactite. If you look at the end of the stalactite, you can actually see a layered structure like an onion, layer after layer forming one outside of the other as this stalactite grew and grew and grew. Now, each drop of water leaves behind only the most minuscule amount of calcium carbonate before it drips off or evaporates, and so a stalactite will take hundreds or even thousands of years to form. And once it's gone, it may never come back. And if it does come back, it's going to be a good long while. For this reason, you should not go into a cave and break off stalactites and take them home with you. It's illegal, and perhaps even more importantly, it's immoral. It means that other people coming to that cave cannot enjoy the spectacle and the beauty of those stalactites. There's a cave that I visited many years ago where one room was completely barren of stalactites. Only the stubs of stalactites were remaining, sticking down out of the ceiling. And that's because back before there were laws to protect cave formations, the tour guide used to break off a stalactite from the ceiling and hand one to each visitor as a souvenir. And of course, after a bit of that chamber had no more stalactites in it. That doesn't happen anymore, so don't be part of the problem. At any rate, another good point is that you shouldn't even touch the stalactites, because it's water action that allows a stalactite to continue to grow and lengthen, but your hand has oils in it. So if you touch the stalactite with your hand or your fingers, it leaves that oil on there, and the water beads up and runs off and cannot stay in place long enough to deposit that calcite on there. And if the stalactite gets too many fingerprints on it, it'll just stop growing altogether, and you no longer have a living cave structure, but a dead one. Now, the water, as it drips off the bottom of the stalactite, hits the bottom of the cave and then evaporates in place, leaving a tiny lump sticking up from the floor. Once again, this goes on for hundreds or thousands of years, and that lump grows taller and taller and taller until you end up with a pile sticking up from the floor, and then you've got another kind of cave structure, like a stalactite, but upside down, called a stalagmite. So stalactites, like this, stalagmites sticking up from the bottom. And if you have trouble remembering which is which, here's a device I use. I think about bugs getting in your stockings, because when the mites go up, the tights go down.